episode. We are going to be discussing children today. We always have great topics regarding divorce, family law, criminal defense, but very rarely do we focus on the little people who are oftentimes impacted by the decisions that the adults in their lives make. And so today, this video is dedicated just to that. If you are thinking about a divorce or a separation, you might want to really listen to this video, watch it a couple of times. And of course, if you know anyone that's going through a situation like a divorce and has minor children, make sure that you forward this video along to them. Please like it if it's helpful for you, if it speaks to you. That is its purpose, all right? We want to educate our parents and we want to educate fellow Georgians about how their decisions a lot of times impact the young people that are very close and near and dear to the hearts of the adults in their lives. I can speak to this personally as a product, not only a product of divorce, but as someone that has gone through divorce, and a lot of times, as the adults, and we are very focused on ourselves, and we forget to really pay attention and be mindful of how our children are impacted by our decisions. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is how divorce impacts minor children. We're going to share some statistics that are just available to you online regarding just about sometimes talking about school, how the grades might be impacted, how emotionally students or young people might be impacted, and then talk about a little bit about what that looks like as you go through the process of divorce with the courts, and then psychologically, what stages some of the minor children might be experiencing as the adults are also navigating these waters. So that's a little bit of the roadmap of things to come as we embark on this journey this evening. Okay. All right. So here is going. This is a practical guide for parents and counselors and even family law professionals, and just really thinking of how children are going to be impacted by the decision that parents might make to essentially sever ties and dissolve the marriage contract. All right. All right. So, one of the most common questions that we get when folks are going through divorce is how do you think this is going to impact our children? Of course, we are not mental health professionals, we're spiritual advisors. So, our focus is supposed to be essentially on the law, and that is where our area of expertise is. But we have, I think, just an observation, and of course, there's things that we've experienced personally that I think gives us a certain expertise in this area, or a certain level of understanding, at least when it comes to how minor kids are impacted. And so, the best way to really answer this question is going to say it's going to be complicated, and of course, each child is different, each household is different, each separation is different. Some parents are separating amicably. Some are at each other's throats, and so all of that is going to play out differently for those little people that are in your home. Some kids are younger than others, right? Some kids may not remember the marriage or the divorce. Some kids may be old enough to where they are tremendously impacted. They may be close to the parent that is going to become the non-custodial parent, and it upends their entire life. Okay. Some people, young people, they say they never recover from them parents moving on. So the answer is that it is going to be it is complicated, right? And so research shows that divorce can create emotional, behavior, educational, psychological challenges for children. And as I already indicated, that's going to look different and manifest different in children. Okay. And so the research does, however, say something that is encouraging, and it's that divorce itself is not the greatest predictor of outcomes. And that's good news. However, the greatest predictor is going to be parental conflict, right? And so, guess what? Most divorces have a lot of parental conflict in them. So though the divorce itself is not a big predictor, the conflict that the parents experience is one. Okay, and then that's going to impact the quality of parenting. And so I would suffice it to say, during divorce, the quality of parenting probably takes a big, huge dip. Okay, because a lot of times the parents are focused on the fighting. Okay, and all of that comes with the fighting, the equitable division of the estate, where everyone's going to live, how the property might be divided when you're talking about retirement and, any other assets or debt that might be out there. And then, of course, the custody portion, who's going to be the custodial, the non-custodial parent. You might talk about spousal support, alimony, attorney's fees. Do you have an attorney? Does one party have an attorney? The other party's pro se. Like, all of these things are going to factor in to what the quality during this time period of parenting is going to look like, simply because both parents are just going to have a lot on their plate, right? And so a lot of times the focus is going to steal the focus away from the minor children, if you understand that you have a finite amount of energy to give to the world, right? And so fighting and basically being embroiled in this process is going to take away from the parenting and focusing on the minor children. So um, this is also going to impact the children's relationship with both parents, right? And so sometimes one parent is going to be blamed for the demise of the relationship, and sometimes, another parent is parental alienation that goes into it. If you don't know what parental alienation is, take a look at some of our other videos. We do a deep dive, and we talk a lot about parental alienation. And so that is not unusual in these types of cases. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about some statistics that I think are important. Every year, it's important to know that you are not in um, um, you are in great company, is what I should say. Right, so about every year, about 1 million kids experience a parental separation or divorce. Right, so your kids are in great company. Okay, and so understanding that, you also have to understand that kids are pretty resilient. Right, people understand that, and understand that with time, kids can recover from things. Most children will adjust after a divorce. I think the going statistic is that it takes around 2 to 3 years in many instances for the adjustment to happen. At least that's according to the American Academy of Pediatrics. All right. Now, the statistics are interesting though, because what it also says is that children of divorce are more likely to experience certain things: anxiety, things like depression, behavioral issues, academic difficulties, emotional stress, as well as other family challenges. Okay. And so that's important to understand if you are in this process, how your children are being impacted by both your conduct as well as perhaps the divorce proceedings themselves. All right. So one thing that is important and key to a key takeaway is that children do not experience divorce like adults. Okay, this is your romantic partner. Okay, you chose this person. All right, you chose to procreate with this person. All right, and so this is who you will be co-parenting with probably for the rest of your lives. Your children will grow up to be, adults themselves. They'll grow up to be children. You may be Nana and Pawpaw, or you might just be the adults, the guardians. Either way, you might become grandparents, great grandparents. You might be at weddings, birthdays, and so it's going to be important that you find a way to co-parent. Right, easier said than done. Right, especially if you and the opposing party, your ex-spouse, your ex-partner, are at one another's throats. Okay, or y'all just don't see eye to eye, or y'all are just two passing ships in the night. All right, but kids don't experience separation and divorce like parents. Parents will say, "Hey, man, we're ending the marriage." All right. That's just the end of it. This is, the road. We've reached the end of the road regarding our dealings. But for children, they often their takeaway is, did I cause this? Right? Or will mom and dad stop loving me as a result of the divorce? Where will I live? Will I lose one of my parents? Will my family ever be normal again? Okay. So there's a lot of anxiety that children may experience with this divorce and these changes. All right. And so here are some of the stages that it's believed that children experience as they take on really working through the divorce itself. And so the first stage is going to be confusion, right? And some of their common reactions might be shock, fear, anxiety. Sometimes they may ask questions, right? Children are already inquisitive. They may ask a lot of questions, okay? And so many parents will do their best to answer the questions. Um, for many of the children, those answers won't be sufficient. And to be honest with you, they may not make sense in the mind of a child. Okay, you also have to keep that in mind. So children often struggle to understand why the divorce is happening. I mean, you can explain it in a thousand different ways, but it's still going to probably be challenging to understand why the divorce or separation is actually happening, what happens next, and whether or not they are responsible for it. The next stage is just going to be loss. Okay, the child is going to probably experience grief, sadness, loneliness, and a feeling of abandonment. All right. And so that is the next step in divorce. Just understand that abandonment component. That is something that is brutal to the mind of a young person. All right. Feeling of abandonment and how that might resonate through the years, the decades of their lives, and what they may do in order to really attempt to address that internal feeling of abandonment, and they may be unsuccessful in doing so. As I mentioned, I am a personal product of divorce. And so there is a loss that I was never able to recapture from not having a relationship with my father, right? My mother did everything in her power to really foster and facilitate that relationship. And I absolutely credit her with that. But that loss, it was quite devastating, all right, to me in my personal life and my growth. And so that is something that um, children will really grapple with. Okay. And so it's something that you need to be very mindful of, that feeling of abandonment. Stage three is anger. Okay. Anger, children may become defiant, oppositional. They may become withdrawn, irritable. Okay. And they might direct that anger at one parent. It's not unusual. Okay. Sometimes that parent is going to be the non-custodial parent. Sometimes it's the custodial parent. Sometimes someone is blamed for that divorce, blamed for the changes, blamed for the transition, and in blaming that parent, a lot of the anger and resentment might be directed at that parent. Okay, so that can absolutely be a thing. Stage four is adaptation. They adapt, and I think it's important to probably also share that not everyone experiences these stages, maybe in any kind of a sequential order, or they just might not experience them at all, or they might get stymied and stuck at one particular stage, right? So stage four is adaptation, right? That's where we all would like to see minor children get to. They adapt to the new circumstances, new schedules, two homes, co-parenting relationship, and the new relationship. And it may take months, it might take years. Okay. I am always, you'll hear me if you follow along. I like to talk about Deion Sanders, the relationship that he had with his ex-wife Pilar, and watching him, of course, they are a media family. So they lived out their lives in the media, and watching just how they have co-parented over the years, and really how toxic at one point in time their relationship was, how it impacted their kids, and their kids that are now adults and grown-ups. And they are still, as you can see, there are still some challenges that Dion and Pilar have, being in the same room, because of the things that happened over the course of their marriage and their subsequent divorce. and you can see how nervous it still makes. And they're not minor children anymore, but Shador and, and Shiloh, the young men, when both of their parents are in the same elevator, in the same room, in the same under the same roof, right? Everyone is walking on pins and needles. However, it seems like now, of course, the parties have adjusted. There is acceptance, and that stage number five is acceptance. Okay. And so when the minor children or the children begin to establish stability and they understand the new routines and everyone feels safer emotionally. Okay. So those are some of the stages. And as I mentioned earlier, most of the kids are going to experience different things, and many times it's going to differ based on their psychological development, which might correspond with their age. Okay, and so let's talk about infants. Okay, so infants might, they may manifest sleep disturbances, feeding issues, increased fussiness. All right, those are probably more age specific symptoms that of that going through those stages that they may experience. Whereas someone, kids that are preschool age, they may feel that they've caused a divorce. Okay. They may feel that they can also reunite their parents. Okay. And so you need to understand that. And, sometimes kids are, taking on the Herculean task of attempting to reunite their parents, make their parents love one another again so that they can be a, nuclear family. And so they may show regression, things like bedwetting, those type of things. Then you have elementary school age kids, right? Kids maybe age 6 to 12. Some of their common reactions might be sadness, guilt, academic struggles, as well as behavioral issues. Okay, they may see loyalty conflicts, choosing sides. That's a big one, right? Kids will choose a side, right? You're either for your mom, you're for your dad, you're either for the custodial parent, the non-custodial parent, this guardian over that guardian, and that tug of war emotionally and psychologically can be quite destructive to a young mind and a young heart. So it's important to understand that teenagers may experience anger and depression, risky behaviors they engage in, substance use, and then of course withdrawal, which is a kind of a normal teenage response to anything. However, it's something to be mindful of, something to watch, and to make sure that you monitor. Now, let's talk about how this might impact their school, kids' school, if they're school age, the academic effects that it could have. Some children experience declining grades, attendance problems, concentration issues, and disciplinary issues. Okay, that is not unusual for kids that are kind of going through this, that are of school age, right? And why it is just because the emotional energy is being spent trying to manage family stress. Okay, and so it just they're tapped out when it comes to school, right? Their bandwidth is can't really handle everything that's going on in the house as well as everything that's going on in school, and the uncertainty that comes with what the future might hold, because their parents is going through this divorce. All right, so let's talk really briefly, and we did discuss this also earlier, the mental health impact. So some common health concerns that we try to look for in young people. Young people might experience as a result of this anxiety, depression. We kind of covered that, as well as emotional, really uh, dysregulation. All right. That's a big one, right? And so you want to monitor young people, especially that fear of abandonment. I talked a little bit about that because that really resonated with me. And then you can see it sometimes in the eyes of young people. I see it a lot of times because I frequently work with clients that are in juvenile detention, and a lot of young men. And you have a conversation with them and you can hear it. You can hear that emotional pain sometimes in them sharing their stories, and that abandonment part. Sometimes it won't be vocalized, but you can hear it, right? It comes out. It shows itself. It manifests in when they're telling their stories. And so you do want to monitor that. Okay. The biggest predictor of harm, as I already said, is not the divorce itself, but it's going to be whether or not the parents are constantly fighting, parents using children as messengers, as spies, parents criticizing each other in the company of other children of the children, the children being part and parcel of litigation battles. We just had a case like that recently, and that's just terrible. Asking a child to testify against another, that stuff is unconscionable, because it forces the child to take sides. It is, and that's really the bedrock of what parental alienation looks like, and it completely obliterates that parent-child relationship. I mean, especially if there's no abuse or neglect or anything like that going on. Sometimes people do this stuff just for legal gamesmanship, all right, or for to one up their ex-spouse or ex-partner, and it's just diabolical work, guys. And so this is when parental alienation can occur. And this is what the research essentially bears out, guys, is that ongoing parental conflict is more harmful than the divorce itself. All right. And so just the conflict, okay, the ongoing conflict is more destructive than the actual divorce. And that's going to be hard for a lot of parents, I think, to hear in the stomach. So the impact on a custodial parent, that's the parent that has the minor child the majority of the time. Usually they experience just common their challenges are going to be things like they're being stressed, they're being burnt out. They may feel financial pressure, as well as emotional exhaustion, which can lead to like overprotective parenting, as well as inconsistent discipline. And so, in these situations, you might have heard this term: children can become parentified. Okay, and that's where the child begins emotionally caring for the parent. All right, so in many instances, statistically, you will see moms are going to be the custodial parent, and there is just the minor child is may feel a certain protectiveness when it comes to mom, right? And as opposed to sometimes if the non-custodial parent is going to be dad, dad is not present. And so sometimes, that non-custodial parent can quite easily be a target and be the victim of parental alienation. Impact on a non-custodial parent, who I just mentioned, might be reduced parenting times, feeling of loss, guilt, depression, and of course, disengagement from the parenting process altogether. That's a very big one, right? That's one that also resonates with me. Just being disengaged, okay? Especially if you feel like the legal process, the apparatus is against you, not on your side. You're fighting a purely uphill battle. It can be you can be beaten down to where you just essentially disengage from the process, from parenting altogether, right? So resonates with me quite a bit. All right, so what children need most, these are the top five protective factors. Is guess what, guys? And it's going to be hard because you're going through divorce or separation. The thing that kids in this situation need most is low conflict. Okay. They need the conflict to be reduced. All right. If that happens, then of course, it makes this process a lot easier for them. High conflict, you can expect everything that I just talked about, the nuclear fallout that's going to follow the divorce. The kids will probably be devastated. Relationships, will be more than likely frayed, and it's just going to be an uphill battle all the way for those kids to recover emotionally as well as psychologically. Consistency, just having a predictable schedule for the kids, visitation being set at certain dates and times. If you are a magnanimous custodial parent, making certain that your child sees the custodial parent as often as possible. That might include the weekends that they have access and visitation, and even the off weeks, right? Giving them time during the off weeks. That's going to be great for your children. Might not be great for you, might not be what you want, might not want to see the ex-spouse or ex-partner that often. However, guess what? That's going to be great for your children, right? Great for their mental health, great for their well-being, great for their development. Number three is going to be just access to both parents. I just talked about that. The more access they have to both parents, the better. Okay. You want your children to be well-rounded. You want, the young men to have healthy relationships with young women as adults. You want the young women to have healthy relationships with young men as adults. And, even, just other alternative relationships. You want them to be well-rounded human beings. That's going to happen from having access to both parents. And then, of course, things like emotional validation and stability. Those things are going to be five things that are going to help your child during this very difficult and tumultuous process. All right. So here's some common mistakes that parents make. They put children in the middle. I mean, that seems, common sense. Don't put children in the middle of your divorce. But guess what? A lot of times they're collateral damage. Kids are used as pawns in a great big chess game between the two parents, right? And I say a chess game to two parents, two douchebag parents, using their children as chess pieces to try to hurt the other parent, right? Using children to spy on the other parent and come back and give reports, discussing litigation details with children. Like, hey, I'm suing your mom for custody rights, and kids don't need to hear that stuff. Using children as messengers, criticizing the other parent in the company of the minor children, right? Saying that this parent isn't worth anything. That child is 50% of that parent. So if that parent's worthless, then 50% of your child is worthless. Okay. And that's the thing of it is that your child didn't choose either of you have parents. Y'all elected to essentially copulate and create this young person. So the choice was yours. Okay. And if the choice was folly, then that decision rests with you and with that other parent, with the adults. So you don't have to bring the children into the adults' mess. All right. Forcing children to take sides and making children responsible for adult emotions. That's just nasty work, guys. And it just wreaks havoc on the mind of a young child. I want to give a parental alienation warning because we see a lot of it in divorce, right? And it's harmful to the children. All right. And so you do want to monitor this stuff. You want to make sure that you're not engaging in it because it's reprehensible and it's going to land you back in court, guys. I mean, y'all going to end up fighting. If you after you finish out the divorce, you're going to end up back in court. Maybe with lawyers again, fighting contempt, fighting modifications, all that stuff, and it's a huge waste of your money, and a huge waste of resources, and it wreaks havoc on the mind of a young person. So parental alienation, of course, is when one parent is undermining the other, and it can be a pattern of undermining. It creates loyalty conflicts. That's kind of what develops, and so you have these kids who feel a sense of loyalty to one parent as opposed to the other. Guess what? Relationship is destroyed. Relationship with one parent is completely destroyed and obliterated. Congratulations. There will be no consolation prizes. That impacts the psyche and well-being of that minor child that might be an adult. But guess what? It also can impact, their long-term relationships with their partner, with their spouse. We talked about feelings of abandonment. That kind of stuff will possibly manifest. Okay. Children feel forced to reject one parent. I've seen that a lot. Some long-term effects can include relationship difficulties. So where your own children have difficulty being in relationships, one because maybe the stuff wasn't modeled for them, or they just that they internally are dealing with things that they dealt with as a minor child, things like abandonment that they just never recovered from. And it might impact their identity and they may struggle with that. And so these are situations where therapy might be helpful, If you are an adult that has experienced this as a child, therapy might be helpful. If you are going through a divorce with minor children, therapy might be helpful. If you're just going through a divorce, therapy might be helpful. You see that there is a common theme here. You might want to include not just spiritual advisors, but mental health advisors as well, right? Children counseling, will consider counseling when children are showing persistent anxiety, depression, school decline, behavioral issues, self harm concerns, as well as self anger or prolonged withdrawal. Okay. All right, guys. Final message is the goal is not to create a perfect divorce. The goal is to create a healthy post divorce family. You are now co parenting. That is the next chapter of your lives. And so you need to figure out a way to co parent successfully. Okay. And so hopefully you're using some of these gems. Hopefully you're using some of this information to help you get there. Again, children are remarkably resilient. We need to help them move through these stages. You can call them stages of grief to acceptance. We need to assist them in really navigating this really tough time in their lives. And it might be the toughest times that they ever have in their lives. And so it is up to the parents to think about these young people, think about these minor children and ways to co-parent successfully so that they can have a better shot at having healthy relationships than perhaps the adults had. Okay. And that they can be better at choosing a partner than perhaps the adults have been. Okay. And if things don't work out, they can at least mitigate the damage like they saw modeled by the adults in their lives. All right, guys, my name is Genghis Khan. I'm here on behalf of myself and attorney Chelsea Wilkerson. Of course, if you're going through a divorce and you need representation, you know you can always count on us. If you're here in the state of Georgia, you're welcome to go to the link in our bio, tap that, get scheduled for a consultation, or you can call 478-845-1213 or 404-999-9529. We'd be happy to talk with you. We're open Monday through Friday, and we also are open on Saturdays, 10 to 1 to schedule consultations. We have a friendly receptionist that will chat with you, get the information we need, and then we will do our conflict check and we will get back to you. We'll find out if we are a good fit for one another. And if so, we would be proud to represent you in your divorce, child custody, legitimation, men's rights, or even criminal defense case. All right, guys, make sure that you like, follow, and if this has been helpful for you and you know someone else going through divorce with children or separation, it's in your best interest, in their best interest, for you to share this information with them. All right, guys, thank you so much. We will see you next time.